We look forward to making this as interactive as possible. Roberto will be leading us and going through, say, slides, giving examples, and he'll kind of say what it is, how to apply it, the benefits, and then more importantly, how this can actually help you in your daily work as you think about improving something. I'll actually also jump in, and what we'll try to do is make this a little bit more interactive with some real life examples, and more importantly, ask you for some examples that you might be experiencing in your day-to-day worlds. So in any event, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Roberto, and we will actually get this party started. So over to you, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Dennis. Really appreciate you. All right. Hello again, everyone. It's that time, Improvement Academy time, and on to session 2. This will be lean management principles. All right, let me advance. All right, so session outline for today. We'll have a little segment of be kind, please rewind. So this is my point to go back to session 1 and then give a little bit of a review. And then we'll talk through lean principles and their real world applications, introducing project management in lean. And I'm going to emphasize on what's a tool called Gantt charts. And then relating principles to daily work, okay? Always trying to bring it back home. How does these kind of sometimes feeling abstract tools, how can they be used in your home, daily life, work environment? Okay. All right, first one. So whole blow up of materials here, but this is me bringing back session 1 materials. As we went over last time, we talked about, well, why are we talking about performance improvement? How does this add value to my day or the work that I'm doing? Well, we had talked about a couple, 4 components that I like to consider as, well, there's considerations of efficiency, of making a process efficient, making things more quality rich, so performing better. There's when you engage in PI, you have opportunities to engage other people, and then innovation sparks. And you're talking about, well, what problem is at hand, and what do we want to do differently? And you can go through a number of exercises that may lend to certain epiphanies that might happen. Then there's cost reduction, and sometimes by making things better, more efficient, being aware of certain quantities that are utilized for a given thing, you might actually end up reducing cost. Then we went and talked about other areas such as the system of profound knowledge. This is a big framework to think through that we would consider, okay, well, we're going into PI. What are those things that we need to be molding our brain and adjusting our brain to start doing this work? And the considerations that you might want to have are appreciation for a system. You're going to look at a certain problem, or maybe there's a goal in front of you. And during this work, you're going to have to understand that there are many things associated with this maybe problem at hand. There's people, there's maybe equipment, there's many steps. Then there's the theory of knowledge, just talking about, well, how do I work with you? How do you work with me? What is that application of maybe tools at hand that we can use during this journey? Then there's the psychology, and that's another layer to it that's talking about, well, how do we work with each other? How do we maybe work with others regarding buy-in and those type of meaningful conversations to say, hey, I appreciate you, you appreciate me, and I'm not trying to tell you you've done everything wrong or that sky is falling, but how do we work with each other to make this a respectful conversation and moving things forward? And then understanding variation is a data component. That's where we're talking about, well, how are we measuring success and failure? And in between those, there's data. There is some form of activity that is being measured, so that you can then you have to make a definition of, well, again, how do I know it's going right? How do I know it's going wrong? And what does that variation in the data tell me? Can I say, oh, my whatever number, if a higher number in a certain goal or percentage is of a good thing, was it truly a good thing, or was that a blip? Was that just happenstance? we'll talk more about that. Then we talked about kind of bringing it again back home. Well, high school days, maybe you've started learning about the scientific method, and a lot of the methodologies that I will be talking through during this whole series you'll be able to kind of reflect and bring back to that basic tried and true scientific methodology and observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, conclusion. And what I'll do is also help to layer, so just to see for yourself how some of these various methodologies, these branded methodologies by various experts, kind of relate. But I mean, certainly layer on and add, and I'll speak to that. But what you'll start seeing is there's a certain theme that it's hard to kind of, yeah, you'll see, oh wait, that does resemble the scientific method. Maybe a different word is used. Maybe a few extra kind of theories are added to it, but you'll see that. And then we last talked about people. We talked about people before us that contributed to where we're at today with our understanding of performance improvement. All the way back to the 1850s and the start of manufacturing and changing of parts for machines, to Henry Ford and assembly lines, to talking about data and process control diagrams, and then now moving into the 1950s and talking about how one corporation in general, Toyota car manufacturing group, really harnessed a lot of this into real time kind of activities to make things better in their area of work. And then I'll go from there. So a quick little review session. All right. And so that brings me to where I just left off, which was Toyota. So last time, and maybe a little bit before, I had shared about a few individuals who contributed, right? Who contributed towards knowledge base on overall management activities, as well as how to measure certain activities over time. And then last time I'd also spoken about, there was a time period, World War II, where a lot of these activities were happening, where US had needed to greatly expand upon their capability to produce machines and instruments that were evolved, that were needed as a part of that wartime environment, and how certain of the work that was learned ahead of time, such as standard work activities, contributed towards that capability for the US to essentially supply itself with tanks, planes, and everything that was needed quickly. And I also shared that some of those individuals also ended up traveling over to Japan to support the needed rebuild of the Japanese infrastructure in manufacturing. And from that, one of those groups, Toyota, was one of those who we could say really took on those methodologies and ran with it. So a little bit of a background from there. So as we all know, we Toyota cars, Toyota. It comes from the family name Toyota with a D, and represented here, Kichiro, is the son of the original founder of the Toyota. I wrote down Toyota Industries Corporation. And so, just again, a little kind of fun history facts. Toyota, at one point in time in the early 1900s, was actually a loom company, manufacturing company, and Kichiro became an engineering student and had opportunities to learn more about manufacturing from Europe as well as the United States, and was able to take those learnings and bring them back home to his family business. And Kichiro was actually the one who helped to transition from a loom manufacturing company to a car automotive company. And in doing that, he was one of the early architects of Toyota's framework and supporting the understanding and redesign of, okay, here's a manufacturing plant. How do I make this more efficient? And just to reflect on the timeline, this is the 1940s. This is right in the middle of World War II. This was resources such as steel and rubber were in short supply. And so businesses like Toyota needed to be more efficient, which drove part of this conversation. Oh, just a reminder, if you have your mic on, if you don't mind muting. Great. So in that, Kichiro was the one who helped to understand the plant manufacturing area and helped to make some big decisions, which was how to stratify and break apart different departments to make essentially small cells of people and improve upon and make those small cells more efficient. And again, to not only make things more efficient, but stretch the dollar because of how short supply certain resources were. So there was that definitely goal of how do I do more with less. In the 1940s, and then Taiichi Ohno came on board as a manager within the Toyota Group. And we're going to talk a lot more about his contributions to the Toyota production system and how those translated into what we know today as Toyota management / manufacturing. Okay, so Taiichi Ohno well, actually, I'll go to the next slide and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So one moment. Okay, so TPS. So there's Toyota, and we talked about, so there's Toyota Industries Corporation, and then how Taiichi Ohno came in as a manager to help to further expand upon the manufacturing capability of Toyota. And he was one who helped to design what's known today as the Toyota production system. Okay. And in that, I want to give you a heads up. There are Japanese terms that I will be sharing today. And those are terms that are important for this kind of history lesson, but also not, you don't necessarily speak to it, but certainly as we get familiar as people who are performance improvement folks, it's good to be aware of certain terms that are used, not necessarily that we have to use those in our day-to-day. I think what's most important is you don't necessarily just know the term, but you know what's happening, what's the definition behind it. So Taiichi Ohno came up with two core principles of the Toyota production system, Jidoka and just-in-time. So Jidoka has to do with essentially waste, thinking about anything that does not add value to the final product or service. So really think about this, and it's important from the customer's perspective. So it's not just about, hey, how do I make a vehicle, right, for the Toyota plant? How do I make a vehicle and produce it as fast as possible? But really to take a step back and get that other lenses, thinking about, well, if I was a customer, what things would I be willing to pay for to eventually get that vehicle? And by using that kind of reverse lens, we might be able to identify opportunities to remove what's called waste. Okay, and I'll talk more about that soon. So that's the thought and theory of Jidoka, anything that does not add value. Then there's just-in-time. And just-in-time is a thought of flow. It's a thought of making things available when they need to be available and maybe right amounts of what you need. So it's, we're going to go into certain identifications of waste, but this is such as I have exactly what I need to do or have in order to complete my job. If I don't have what I need, then you might imagine I can't actually do my job as well as I could. Maybe it might be as simply as I don't have a desk. If I don't have a desk and I'm putting maybe I have a laptop and I have it on my lap, and you might imagine I might not be able to then have a mouse to move things around, and my work day is just going to tank. It's not going to be as efficient as it potentially could have. So I thankfully had that material when I started my job. So it was just in time from when I started, and so I could then do work. And so there was no waste in time. I wasn't waiting for a desk to come by. Okay, so supporting these principles were other key elements that I want to call out. And there's a few of these. So there's the thought of Kaizen. And Kaizen is continuous incremental improvement. And think of this as, okay, performance improvement, continuously making things better, but acknowledging that things you can't, like I like to say, there's no world peace overnight. There are certain steps that are needed to get there. And that's what Kaizen's about. It's certainly what can we do to, and we prioritize to make happen to move closer and closer to that goal. Next one is Poka Yoke, and that one is fail-safing. Think of this as, this is really, really important. I mean, they're all important, but I really appreciate this one. This is mistake proofing. This is when performance improvement happens and you get to a point in time where you've maybe identified a certain issue and a core issue at hand, and you now are switching to how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? And that is the process of mistake proofing. You're saying, how do I ensure and build a system around that initial problem so that it doesn't happen again? Maybe I'm assigning something to someone to now do within their day-to-day job, and not just telling them, but maybe I'm also providing documentation and support guides so that they have that available as a reference. And maybe I take it a step further. Maybe I'm also ensuring that I'm training them to those guides. And maybe even a step further, I'm not just training them, I'm also asking for teach back. And I'm asking them to, can you describe to me what exactly needs to happen in this job? And then another step further, maybe I have a quality system around it and saying, you know what, I'm going to myself, let's say, as maybe I'm involved in this area, I'm going to participate in this by having my own responsibilities. I'm going to check in on this at a different frequency, wherever this problem or area is. The individual who may be doing the work or involved in the work and who has been trained on the work may be doing it every single day. But as oversight, I might be checking it on every other day, once a week, whatever is appropriate, where I can say, hey, I have double checked that we're still doing the right thing, and we can feel confident that we've now mistake-proofed this thing from happening ever again. And I think another layer of it is sometimes if you mistake proofs were so well that you could actually remove altogether, not needing anything because you've made it easy to do the right thing. So let's say, what's a good example? I mean, I can talk about medications. I can talk, I know, sure, Dennis could probably jump in, but there's been things associated with medications and vials and color coding certain medications, and talking about, well, what if there was a medication that had a vial that had the same exact color, same exact look and feel of it, and the only true difference is maybe some really small text writing. Well, and let's say these medications obviously do very different activities to the human body. Well, how do I make it easy to do the right thing? Well, we might decide, you know what, we need to either separate these medications all together so they're not right next to each other. We might color code them differently, right? Those are providing fail-safe, just completely removing them from in a mistake actually happening. Okay, great. Now we're going to go into value stream. It's a concept associated with back to Jidoka and the customer's perspective. It's talking about, well, what are the sequence of activities that need to happen to get the certain product that the customer wants. So last time we talked about process maps, and I had talked about me making coffee in the morning. And sure, that's a process, right? And then me, let's say in that sequence, I'm the customer. So I want to make sure that I have everything that I want, right? There's nothing added to that process of what I don't want. And I'm mapping it out completely, and it's done efficiently. That's part of the idea behind value stream, and I'll be going more into detail about this later on in session 5, I think. All right, this might be a little fuzzy here, but TPS principles. Now we're going to go into, I've talked about this with this word waste, and going back to some of the Japanese terminology, muda. Muda is waste, and with with waste, this is one of the things that's really core to the Toyota production system. It's identifying certain waste that exist within a certain area. And I'll kind of walk through here just to kind of better understand what's happening. So time. So time can be a waste. And think of this as waiting for people or services, time when processes, people, or equipment are idle. They're not doing anything. They're not contributing to that overall goal of meeting the customer's needs now. There's defects. Waste related to costs for inspection of defects in materials and processes. So these are things in which you can talk about cars again. You can say, well, my windows weren't, I push the button, the windows aren't going up. And that's a defect. And we will know more about those defects because let's say there's a whole recall and the car company had found that, oh yeah, there is an issue with the electrical part of the window. Fantastic.
Roberto, can I ask the audience one quick question? So when you talk about these 7 wastes in healthcare, really is, it's probably a few more, but things that get in your way or they waste time or waste something, money, etc., or things that just are pain points, they frustrate you, they just ignore you. If everybody would actually put in the chat, this is going to be like a little in-class assignment, one thing that gets in your way that you think is waste. So it might be like getting dressed in the morning where you can't get your kids to, eat their breakfast in time. Or so that might be time. It might be, okay, hey, I'm processing work at the job, but it just takes so long to actually get this piece of paper approved. What would that actually look like? Okay, it's this good one, paper timesheets. That's, oh my goodness. Running on county time. Hey, Matt, that's a good one too. So by that is what? Okay, you're wasting so much time. You're wasting time in meetings. You're doing more paperwork than you absolutely need. You got these approvals that you have to get through. You can't hire anybody in a timely manner because you got to go through so many hoops. All those are examples of waste, okay? Waiting for other people to get ready to go. Oh, that's a good one. Let's put that back in the parking lot. Slow hiring process. Oh, these are great. Working on projects that are later scrapped. Biggest cause of waste in county. Biggest cause of waste. Doing some work that later gets scrapped because guess what? It wasn't scoped properly in the first place. And it's wasting everybody's time in red tape, reviewing information in meetings because people are late. So you got to redo the same old stuff over and over again. Okay, keep them coming. Couple more.
I know we all work in the either county or city or some kind of bureaucracy. Everyone can name at least one or personal life.
Personal conflicts. Yeah, like this person don't get along with the other one. So you never get to the root cause of why you're there and you just beat around the bush the whole time. Scheduling conflicts. Yeah, it's just waste. Or have to, bureaucratic purchasing process. Lisa, that's a big one. Why would you say that's wasteful? That you have to go through so many hoops to probably get something done. Constant need for follow-up. That's absolutely. So anyway, I think you get the message and try to look at it just from what you do every single day. People arriving late to work. Yeah, absolutely, because you can't get started. Reminding staff over and over again, or yeah, for sure. All these are opportunities. Like, guess what? If we can fix some of these, it would make our day a lot more pleasant, bring us joy in work, and not to mention our overall, say, just culture and just overall efficiency and just the benefits of just being part of such a great, great organization. Looking for my keys every morning when I'm ready to leave. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about where do you put your keys in the same place so you know where they are in the morning, except for like if your kids move them or something like that. But then you're going to say, no, 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 no. If you move them, put them right back in that place. Okay? So just some examples that we would like for you to just internalize and personalize around your day. What could you do differently to take out the wasteful things that get in your way? And I'll turn it back over to Roberto.
Perfect. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. Thank you. So, as you can, what I would really like you to do is to take some of those examples that you had provided and reflect back now on which of these 7 wastes they may be associated with. Is it time? Is it defects? Is it emotion? And by the way, I know it gets sometimes, for me, I got a little tricky. What's the difference between motion and transportation? Motion, think of that as unnecessary movement of people. Let's say I need to do work at my desk here today, but then I need to go clear across campus over at CCRMC to then do an activity, then come back to my desk, then go to another part of my campus and back, right? So is it necessary for me to do that job where I have to walk around? It might be a waste of motion, right? And then transportation, that's about more like objects, physical objects, equipment, things that are needed. You have to pick up something here, bring it over there, then you have to pick up again. This could be involved with like materials such as incoming office supplies at the wherever your supplies may be dropped off and then moved from one spot to another to another to another. Overproduction, producing more than what's needed, and this could be you overproducing of, maybe I overprinted or copied something, or I did something, me and someone else did something, and it was actually redundant work. Inventory.
Well, like Roberto, like they put in the chat, overproduction is all those approval levels that you need. Do you really need everybody in the world to sign off on one, say, purchase order or contract? You know, can that authority be delegated down? So that's overproduction. More people are touching the things that really add no value.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, they got to sign off on it because they say the quote leader or so. So, you know, just think about all the different ways how we can take out these little things that A, waste time, B, they annoy people, and C, it's just not no fun. But go for it, Roberto.
And I'll just end on inventory here. Think of that as maintaining too much of something. And we've seen this, we could talk about office supplies, and maybe someone inadvertently ordered another box of staplers or staples, and now we have 20 in our supply closet, and we use maybe one box a month or less. Great. Thank you so much. So I would love for you to start thinking about that, and feel free to add into the chat maybe one thing that you might want to consider. Hey, here's a waste, and oh, it is actually associated with this certain principle of a waste, the 7 wastes. Okay, now moving into the next one, I wanted to provide additional examples here. Okay, so there are, I just labeled 7, and those are the original Toyota production system wastes. And then there have been additional wastes, as Dennis had mentioned. And just to add on to that, you'll see number 8, human potential. You can, just to provide examples, not listening to employees, pressuring people to hide and cover up problems. My goodness. People habitually working below their level of licensure. So I won't go through these in detail, but you can see here how there are some real life examples that you might also see in your work environment and say, oh yeah, I've seen that. Right? We're trying to meet.
That's the biggest form of waste right there, that number 8, people habitually working below their level and just, you know, okay, I'm going to do the minimum amount just to get through the day versus being excited and fired up and getting more out of them. It's almost like, okay, hey, are we getting 80% out of our people or self? Or do I come to work and I'm going to do the minimum amount that I can do today just to get by? I'm thinking about me personally now, not you guys.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. Perfect. So I hope that through this activity and what you see in front of you, you can start understanding how these wastes are so present in all of our lives, and maybe, you know, certainly you've seen it, you recognize it, Maybe sometimes you might need to take a step back and maybe hopefully with this new lens of actually calling out what these wastes actually are, you can say, oh my goodness, waste in transportation, waste in inventory, right there. And then you can have a fun time with shouting it out to your supervisors and everybody. Okay, so now it's a transition. We just talked about the lean, the Toyota production system and the workings of Taichi Ono, and we'll continue to talk through that. And there was a transition where, for our conversation's sakes, where there was a group of folks, I'll say one name included James Womack, who had traveled from the US. He was associated with MIT and then went over to the Toyota production system, Toyota, to learn about all of this great efficiency that was happening and quality of the automotive products that were coming out of the Toyota. And so this group of team went to go investigate, and they came back and distilled essentially 5 main principles. One was identify value, right? We saw that with Taichi Ono's principles. Map the value stream, absolutely true. Create flow. This one is more so, think about process steps and think about making the steps so efficient that you're reducing the waste in between the process steps. So for instance, we like to talk about time. Maybe you've probably seen, you send an email to someone and it might, maybe they can't get to it for a day, 2 days, 3 days. So that email and maybe that activity that you really needed to get input on waits in someone's email inbox for a day, 2 days, 3 days. That means the work that you wanted to accomplish by getting that email, let's say a question answered, is sitting. And that's essentially waste. And so by maybe putting in some new expectations of about maybe even a different communication style, you're removing that wait time and thus reducing waste and creating better flow. Very simple example, but that's the idea behind flow. Not just communication, we can even talk about activities that are happening in your own given environment, work, moving around with physical objects. Next one is established pull. This concept is more so about, think about, again, process steps. And when we think about process steps, let's think about, as I showed that diagram of a process map going from the far left over to the right. I guess in your way, I'm kind of reversed, but that way. So, and let's say there's upstream and downstream. So downstream is those beginning things, and upstream is things going to the right, and those activities that are going closer and closer to that final product. Maybe a little complicated there. But think about it as, maybe I need to restart this. Let me try something else. I'm going to give
it. Share an example on that too, Roberto, on pull.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gents, remember in the old days when we used to buy cars and we used to go to the lot and they, the car dealers, I don't know if anybody was a car dealer or, worked in a car place or automobile place, but remember they built all the cars, they had them on the lot, you go out to the lot and you kind of picked one. And then, you maybe, decided on that when you kept it for a day and then bought it back, etc. But the whole deal was the car, manufacturers and retailers, they would buy all the inventory and they would keep it on the lot. And then customers would come, like to me or you or so, and actually pick a car. But the actually company, they would actually be holding all this inventory at a very high price. And nowadays, even though it still hasn't been totally transferred over, now you can actually go online and actually order your vehicle to your specs. And then based on your order, they actually will make it. Now, they might already have 80% of it already kind of pre-built, but then they'll actually add, like, let's say Harley Davidson, let's say the motorcycles or so, they'll actually add the specs based on what you want. So what that does is it prevents them from carrying all that excess inventory, which Roberto said earlier, which is waste. So that way it's a pull system. The customer pulls based on their needs and based on the customer pulling, then we're going to actually build or create real time fast so we don't carry that inventory. And I don't know if that made any sense or not. So what you want to do, you don't want it, you want to actually, based on your customer needs, then actually decide it on the spot versus having this whole bunch of, say, inventory, or if you were a donut shop making all these donuts in advance and no one comes in to buy them, versus, okay, hey, when somebody does come in to buy, okay, you want a glazed donut, now I'll actually make it real time and it's going to take me 2 minutes, but you got exactly what you want. So it's meeting the customer needs and also avoiding the large inventory carrying costs, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's the pull. So Walmart does it great, Target does it great. So every time you as a customer go in and buy something, they have a pull system that automatically reorders that item. But it's only after the customer buys it.
Thank you,
But
Dennis.
go for it then. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for saving me there. And I'll do one more example I've shared in the past. Imagine I have 2 tennis balls in my hands, okay? And Dennis is gonna, it tosses me a tennis ball. Am I gonna be able to catch it? Probably not very well, right? It's gonna fall on the ground and that's it. However, if there was someone else in this, let's say this made up game, and I can either hand it off to that other person or I can put it on the ground, and I ask Dennis, hey Dennis, can you throw me that tennis ball? Guess what? I have an open hand. I can now receive it. So by asking, I'm essentially pulling. I'm pulling something from Dennis to me because I'm ready to receive it. Okay, perfect. All right, next, 5, seek perfection. And this is going back to Kaizen. This is thinking about customers' viewpoint, right? You can start seeing how essentially the lean principles and what we're going to be learning about moving forward has really took on the foundation in which the Toyota production system had created, and then had again morphed it and absorbed it into maybe something a little bit different look and feel. So, by the way, lean was a coined term by James Womack, who went over to Toyota and said, hey, they look like a lean manufacturing essentially setup company. So then that term was coined, and that's what we call this type of methodology moving forward. Okay, so a little pump the brakes real quick, talking a little bit about so you and your role in all this, right? I've talked a little bit about history. I've talked a little bit about different mindsets that you need to be aware of, and different tools that we're going to learn more about in the future. And I want to make sure that you're also aware of like yourself and where do you fit in this, and what kind of skills may be needed to make change happen. So there are 3 main things here to talk about. There's the performance improvement skill set that we're certainly going to be talking throughout this series. There are change management skill sets that are needed. And that was kind of mentioned upon when we talked about the profound knowledge. And we said, hey, what does it look like to get buy-in? And what does it look like to talk with individuals to make change happen? And then there's project management. And this is hardcore documentation. This is talking about meetings. This is talking about facilitating meetings. And you might imagine each of these skill sets are needed to advance a problem forward, to make it better. And really, when we talk about people who are doing improvement, unless there's, I guess you have the fortune of having individual people on the team dedicated to performance improvement and change management and project management, oftentimes a lot of this, these different skill sets and kind of roles get put on a core person, a performance improvement person who's helping to drive that project forward. And so it's important to acknowledge that each of these things are needed in order to get that outcome that you're really wanting to get, which is sustainable improvement. So think of yourself as learning through this session, how you might play your role amongst all of these needed disciplines, or who else on your team might be able to help to facilitate those roles within the team of people. All right, jumping into project management, just to kind of now switching gears, I know it's a little disjointed, but I'm gonna be talking about improvement, I'm gonna be talking about project management, and we'll be also be talking about change management as well. So this is my little quick session on project management, a little introduction here. So as I mentioned, with project management, think of this as what are those core skills needed to bring a group of people together? What does it look like? And you've participated in this, and you've seen you've been a part of meetings before where maybe there's a group of people and everyone is kind of looking at each other to say, who's leading this meeting? Who's facilitating it? Did anybody come up with an agenda? Are we going to talk about the agenda right now and then talk through it? Right. However, if there was someone identified to help either collected agenda items, to help to facilitate conversation, to move things forward, it would improve the conversation and fruitful to getting outcomes of what you want by the end of that meeting, right? So that's kind of the role of where a project manager can come in. And in addition, you can see here, I had meeting minutes. So not only there's agenda, there's minutes being taken to capture the fruitful conversations that are happening. And certainly there's also maybe ensuring that certain tools are used that comes from that performance improvement lens. Okay. And one of my favorites are Gantt charts as it's associated with project management. This is my a little prompt here, a little something to get the conversation going, and we'll talk more about this later. But you look at this, it might be a little scary. This is for me, I really enjoy using Excel. This is an Excel. You can design it however there's little core components to be mindful of when looking at this. So what is this thing in front of us? This thing is called a Gantt chart. And so it's a tool to help visualize a certain set of activities that need to get completed over a period of time. Okay. And so think of this as, it could be something that's generated from meeting minutes of tasks that need to be done. And then you essentially bring that over into the Gantt chart methodology, which helps to really identify a timeline. Because you might imagine that if you don't put time to a certain activity that needs to be completed, it may not get done at all, or maybe in the time frame that you want it to be completed. So there's the importance of putting when do we need to get this and done by when. And in addition to that, you may have a number of competing demands, number of activities that need to get done. By putting it on a document that's visual, you will be able to, for your team, identify, whoa, we're actually doing 5 things at the same exact time. Do we even have the resources to get this done? And there might be consideration of, well, let's reorganize this, right? Let's reprioritize what does need to get done, and does it make sense to get it done in that order, right? Okay, so how to fill this out? And again, this is a kind of intro to it. Typically on the far left side, you have rows that represent large activities that need to get done. And you can add additional columns here that represent more detail of, well, what does it actually mean to get that certain project done? And then you may have a certain column going from top to bottom that represents who's the individual who's responsible for that task. And then now you can see, so that the area that's in green to your left, and and then in this beige to your right is the actual calendar. So it goes, this is a project that I worked on in 2022, and it goes 2022, and it goes November, December, then it goes January, February, March, April, May, June, and so on and so forth. And each of those boxes represent 1 month. And so I'm putting color coding. You don't have to necessarily be color coded. I wanted to be a little bit more on it, where I had a completed, plan, pilot, and you can add in some colors there to represent, well, did I complete this thing? Is it still in the planning stage, or am I just proposing it? And I map it out, at what point in time do I want to get this activity done? Right, this is a great team tool for really getting on the same page and making sure that we're sharing this so everyone knows what's their responsibility and when they need to get certain things done. All right. That's actually the end of my content for today. And one thing I would love to hear from people in the chat is, I know it's kind of rapid fire here, but what's one thing to take away from today's session? What's one thing that you learned maybe you didn't know before coming into today?
One thing that you can actually do or apply once you leave this afternoon, types of waste, okay?
And certainly open for questions.
Keep going.
And certainly interested to hear from anyone if you want to give any feedback. We do have, I just want to call out, we do have a evaluation form that's sent out. So please, if you don't type in today, please fill out the form and complete, and we'll definitely take a look. I know it helps me with understanding what I could do better. And certainly, like last time I talked about, I'm doing essentially a PI project on doing this session series for you all. And so one of the things I looked into was I rewatched session 1. And I'll say there's nothing more humbling than watching yourself talk, especially for an hour. So I got to reflect upon what I might want to do better as a presenter. And one of my key things I honed on is my use of So hopefully I'll do a count and see how much times I use it this session. But you know, I joke, but certainly look for your advice, and please let us know if you have any questions.
If we have a couple minutes, just want to ask the audience one more question, if it's okay, Roberto. What is, if you identified in the chat, please, what is one current problem that you would like to solve as of today? And if you would put that in the chat, one thing that you would like to fix over the next, say, 60 to 90 days. And if I can see just a couple examples. Decrease email volume. Okay, that's good. Okay, another. It's time more effectively. Okay, develop a working plan for patient access efforts. Let's let Nicole. Let's go there for a minute. Say more about that. Develop a working plan. Hiring and retaining staff, making difficult process, decluttering electronics, resolve my Medicare project. Oh, now we're heating up. Super. Then Nisha hits us up with the survey again. Yeah, is that a problem or not? Need to develop project priorities and target timelines. Okay, everybody needs to do that. Proper education at the time of hiring, onboarding. So these are all great. That what we hope is that you think about these things while Roberta and I are actually going through and say, how can I actually use this? This is my problem statement. This is how it is right now, the current state from a process standpoint or value stream or whatever it is. This is how I want it to be. This is the gaps between how I want it to be and how it is now. And how can I actually close these gaps? What are potential solutions? And then what would be my project plan to actually do that? And who would I need to actually involve? So Lisa, I expect you to hit that email problem. And you need data. Like Roberto said last week, okay, you got to count the emails. Every day I get 25 emails. Out of that 25, 15 of them are just a complete waste of time. Okay, count them over, like whatever, a couple of weeks, and then say, okay, hey, how might we actually create some education around these are the email rules? You don't need to, sit thank you all the time. You can just say nothing. Okay, but even thank you all for coming today. Roberto or Erica, if you're still on the line, if you would like to just share anything before we close it out.
Enough for me. Just showing appreciation. Thank you all for joining on this, and we will be. I know we will be updating the sessions schedule a little bit. I think I recognize that I wanted to switch some things around, so we'll update that. But again, thank you for joining in, and definitely.
Thank you, Roberto. Great job. And when you talk about performance improvement, the key word is flexibility.
Yeah.
You learn as you go. You learn as you go. So we're all flexible. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.